Yo, what's up? Welcome to the Sunday Sermon with Mike, your mentor. I hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving week. Hope your weekend has been good, that you've been able to get some sort of rest and relaxation as you gear up for the week ahead. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me. If you're new and you're just catching my page and what I'm sharing, my name is Mike King. And really, I've been on this journey my whole life to figure out what manhood looks like. And really, that came because I didn't have a father in my life. He was absent, and he was absent a lot. And there's a huge backstory to that. But him not being there left me with some serious wounds, rejection, abandonment, and I didn't know what to do to fix those things. And like a lot of guys, I turned to other things to try to heal those wounds, right? And my vice was attention from girls, and it led me to make a lot of bad decisions at a young age, as well as continued on into my older years. And to be real with you, almost destroyed my marriage, right? And along the way, I just thank God that I came across some information that really started to change my life, and some material that caused me to examine not only my life, but what I thought I knew and what I didn't know about authentic manhood, and what that looks like. And it was through that, and it was tremendously difficult, that I had to go back and face those wounds head on and get healing from those, so that I could become a better husband, a better father, a better friend, a better leader in my community. And that journey hasn't stopped over all these years, and it continues on to this day. And so this page is a culmination of all that wisdom that's been sown in me, in an effort to just share that with whoever is willing to listen, because my experience has been dealing with guys not only on a personal level, but on a mass level, in some men's retreats that I've been fortunate enough to take part in as part of the staff. These things are common. I am not the only person who's experienced these things, these woundings. Without a doubt, every person walking this earth is dealing with some kind of wound or not. And specifically for men, we're taught by society to take those things and stuff them down, and then to put on this facade. And so in essence, we're lying to ourselves, we're lying to other people about what we think and how we feel. And maybe you can relate to that, because you say things like, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll be okay, no big deal, when really it does matter. It is a big deal. And unless you address it, you won't be okay. Because whether you realize it or not, those things are affecting every other part of your life. They're affecting your marriage, your relationships with your kids or other people, your friends. They're affecting the kind of person you are when you show up at work. They're affecting the kind of person you are out in your community, right? They're having a toll on you because you're carrying around this baggage that you never took the time to dig through and to drop and walk away from, right? So that's what this journey has been about, and I've just been on here every single day all year long for 2019, trying to encourage you guys and share what I know. So tonight is the Sunday sermon. We're wrapping up our study on eagles, and before I get into that, just a little recap, right? So now it's 7 weeks, but the prior 6 weeks we've been talking about eagles and what they show us about leadership, and a multitude of other things inside of leadership. And it's interesting because the Bible talks about eagles, or mentions eagles, or compares us to eagles over 40 different times. And the question is why? Why an eagle, right? Like not a rhino or a lion or I don't know, some other an elephant, I don't know, some other majestic beast or animal. No, it talks about an eagle, and there's very specific reasons, and we've been going over that, and tonight is the final night of that, where we're talking about courage and how the eagle displays courage. And, I don't think that it's coincidence, at least here in America, that the eagle is the national bird, right? Because of everything that it represents and shows. So let's jump into this and get into this material. All right, Sunday sermon, week 47 or 48. Not really sure. It's probably 47. But yeah, eagle-like leadership, part 7. So talking about living like an eagle, and the first thing, or the main theme of this week, is eagles are courageous. Oh, and I got to shout out whose material this is, because that would not be honorable. This is not my material. This is something I learned in one of the leadership classes I had at my church, and this belonged to Dr. John Burns, who's a pastor, Victory Christian Center in Vancouver, Canada. And when I heard this, it just blew my mind, and I knew that this would come in handy later. So eagles are courageous, right? Eagles stand out and they stand alone. They stand out from any other bird that is out there in just how majestic they are, and their characteristics that we've been over, right? That last week we talked about the excruciating molting process that eagles put themselves through to refine themselves and to what's the word I'm thinking of? To basically morph into another part. I should just look this up. Right? It's actually how they renew their strength, right? How they get themselves out of the funk that they find themselves in, and they're able to renew their strength and refresh themselves, and the lessons that we learned from that. And then eagles stand alone from any other bird in the way that they do things, right? We talked about how previously about the test that the female eagle puts the male eagle through in order to test him to see if she should be his mate or not, right? In the extremes that test looks like. And if he can't pass that test, okay, see you later, you're not the one for me. There's no compromise, because an eagle only mates once in its life. Unless that mate dies, then it will go find another one, but only once, right? They're monogamous for life. And I think that's very, very interesting, and it just shows you the level of commitment that the eagle has. Eagles are bold, right? They're not afraid, and we can look at their lives and what they have done. And we talked about in previous weeks how eagles can sense storms coming in, and they'll fly to these high perches and they'll sit up there with the wind blowing and howling, and they'll let the storm come in, and then they'll ride the thermal waves up above the storm, sometimes 2 miles above the storm, looking down and just coasting back and forth on those thermal waves. I mean, you I don't know how to say it, you got balls to want to do that, right? Secondly, eagles don't flock. They don't hang out in flocks. They're solitary birds for the most part, aside from their mate and their children. And this is important because it's a good distinction to make. They don't go where everybody else goes. Eagles are leaders. They're not followers. And you need to make a decision in your life. Are you going to be a leader, or are you going to be a follower? And my grandpa used to say this to me all the time when I lived with him, when I was getting up in the morning to get ready for high school. Are you a leader, or are you a follower? And he'd say this to me like if I was ever going out with my friends at night. Any opportunity he had, he would ask me that question. And I would just, at the time, placate him and say, of course I know what he wants to hear. I'm a leader, Grandpa. And then he'd sit up in his chair, and stern look on his face. He'd be like, all right, show me, don't tell me. Right? And that served as a reminder to me throughout my life when I had decisions to make, what I was going to choose to do in that decision. Was I going to choose to be a leader, or was I going to choose to be a follower? I didn't always choose to be a leader, and I paid some consequences for that, and I've shared those moments, right? But I definitely was not a follower for the most part. So you need to make a choice. Are you going to flock, or are you gonna lead the way? And another distinction is eagles usually soar. They rarely flap. When we watch eagles fly, you'll notice that it's pretty effortless, right? We talked about how they perch out and then they wait for the storm and then they'll ride the thermal waves up. They're not flapping to do that. They're coasting, right? They're riding the air back and forth very effortlessly, right? And we're meant to do the same thing. We're meant to soar, right? And the way that we do that is we use those things around us that we've been given. We use our talents. We use our gifts, right? We use the things that God has put inside of us. And when we're walking in those areas of our lives, we don't have to put forth as much effort to make things happen because we're aligned in our purpose, right? And that's very important to realize. And that's why it's very important to find out what your giftings are, where you're good at, what you're not good at, and make that distinction. Eagles just ride on the wind, right? They let the wind do the work for them and they just ride back and forth. The same way we need to ride on our giftings, right, in what God has given us, and play to those strengths, and stop trying to be somebody that we weren't created to be. And maybe you're thinking, okay, because I talk to some people and they're like, yeah, I love what you're doing on Facebook and you're encouraging people and I want to do the same thing, but I don't know if I can do it. And what I say to them is, okay, a couple of things. One, if you're already thinking about doing it, you've probably got that inside of you to make that happen, right? But what you need to do is you need to have some courage and step out and be willing to do it. And then as you do it and you practice, you get better and better and better. I mean, it's December now and you're seeing me do this. I would like to think that I'm better doing this now than I was back in January when I started this thing, right? Because mastery comes through repetition. And in order to find out if we have a gifting in something, we have to be willing to try it. But also we have to know when something is not for us or not. I'm not very artistic. I know that. Can I draw a picture? Yes. Will it be a masterpiece? No. So I'm not going to put my time into developing that craft. That is not my natural bent. Eagles, they ride and fly so high, right? We talked about that. Sometimes up to 2 miles above a storm. So miles and miles up in the sky, they are flying. And we're meant to soar. We're meant to fly high. But in order to do that, right, there's some things that we have to leave behind. There's some things that we have to let go of. In each area of our lives, there's going to be different levels that we have to progress through and progress towards, right? And one of the ways that happens for is you need to have a target. You need to have some goals for your life, right? Something to obtain, and that needs to be higher than where you're at. And you need to diligently work at obtaining those things, right? Some ambition, some self-efficacy, right? Which simply means some will to do it for yourself, not depend on somebody else. Interesting. When crows start nipping at an eagle, the eagle just starts to fly higher. And I don't know if maybe you ever see this in nature. You probably look up a video or whatever of an eagle. You know, they either fly up high or they come down low, right? When they got to scoop up food, when they're hunting and all that. And then when they come down low, they can have other birds like the falcon, like we talked about before, like the crow, that come after eagles. One, because they're stupid, apparently. But, you know, they will do that. And all the eagle has to do to leave them behind is he just has to fly higher. Right? And what does that say about us and for our lives? We have crows in our lives too. We have those people that for whatever reason, they're going to nitpick at us. They're going to be jealous of us. They're going to try to hold us back. And really it just comes from their own insecurity and their own woundedness that they've never dealt with. And, you know, we have a decision to make. We can either feed into their nitpicking and stay where they're at, right, on their level where they can attack us and they can do those things to us, or we can choose to fly higher than they are, and get away from them and away from their negative energy, away from their bad influence in our life. And the good thing is it just comes down to a simple decision that we're willing to or not to make. And just like the eagle, right, we need to learn to fly high. And part of that is learning to put up with those crows, just like I talked about, those people in your lives that represent that negativity, and those, or maybe they represent bad habits, or maybe they represent a past life that you're trying to get away from. You know, and what comes to mind is somebody that I know that was locked up, and they got out, and they had a decision to make. Do they go back to the life that they knew before they were in prison, hanging out with the wrong people, having those influences on them, or do they make a choice to say that they're not necessarily better than those people, but that they want to make better decisions for themselves, that they want to live up to their potential, right? That they've so far wasted. And then that person, they made that choice. And today, they're soaring like an eagle because of those choices that they made. But, you know, in our lives, it doesn't matter what level we're at. We're always going to have those crows that are going to be trying to hold us back, that are going to be trying to keep us at their level, right? That don't want the best for us. And we need to be able to discern who those people are and get away from them. I just didn't know. I rehashed this thing again. You have to learn to deal with all the nagging people. I don't know about you, but that's like my pet peeve is nagging. I can't stand it. Like, my daughter is going through this period where she is just, some days she just nags and nags and nags and complains, like, and I don't do good with that, and I'm pretty sure it comes just from my childhood and what we had to deal with, and, you know, my mom working 2 to 3 jobs at a time, and me having to take care of my brothers and sisters, and I developed this huge sense of responsibility, not only for others but primarily for myself, and trying to figure things out. So as a result, I have little patience for people who make excuses and want to nag and complain. Like, right? Like, my hope for you is that you would see that you have a choice in whatever circumstance you are. You have a choice to stay where you're at. You have a choice to make things worse, or you have a choice to do something about it and make things better for your life. And we all know people that have done tremendous things despite their circumstances. And the primary denominator in all those people is that they made a choice to do something about it. Okay? regardless of everything else. It all started with a choice, and we can do the same thing. And here's the crazy thing though, is when we choose to live like eagles, we're going to intimidate other people. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to realize that, right? Like, when you're successful in whatever you do, whether it's as a husband, right, in your family, or as a parent, or at your place of work, or in your community, there's going to be some people that are intimidated by that. And don't be offended by that. And, you should have empathy for those people. Doesn't mean you should necessarily tolerate things that they're doing, but you should have empathy for them, because that intimidation is coming out of their own woundedness. And once they decide that they're going to start working on that and dealing with that, they'll drop that insecurity and they won't be intimidated anymore. And they're going to want to soar just like you soared, right? But know that's the price that you pay with living like an eagle, is that you are going to intimidate others. You're never going to be, and sometimes I fall for this fallacy that you're going to be liked by everybody. It's not the case. And especially when you have wounds of abandonment and rejection, right? Like, that's one of the hardest things for me to deal with, is somebody who just doesn't like me. I've gotten better at it, but it's still a struggle at times, right? Because that wound, as it continues to heal, is still seeking affirmation. The crazy thing is, it's seeking affirmation from somebody who doesn't even really matter. They don't pay my bills. They're not adding to my life. So why should their approval matter at all? Right? And how many of us are doing those things, right? We're seeking the approval and the affirmation of others, or somebody in particular in our lives, who, one, is never going to give us that affirmation or approval, or I should say might never give us that affirmation and approval. And when we get it, it isn't going to fix what we think it's going to fix. So we need to not get over it, but we need to move and look past that and see that for what it is, right? That really there's still a part of that woundedness that needs to be healed, and then deal with it appropriately. And the way that we do this is we get closer and closer to God. We build that relationship so that He can continue to speak into us, to speak truth to us about our identity and who we're created to be, and the purpose that He has for us, and the plans that He has for us to use us, to prosper us, right? To be a blessing to others, to make a difference in other people's lives. There's no greater feeling than the feeling of giving. Whether that's giving your time to someone else, whether that's giving your resources to someone else, whether that's giving your wisdom and your knowledge to someone else to make a difference in their lives. So, in conclusion, as we come to the end of this, I guess, mini course on eagles in the Sunday sermon, an eagle doesn't have a problem flying high or low. It's simply a choice, right, on which one they want to do. And for probably the majority of eagles, if not all eagles, they choose to fly high unless they have to, right? Unless they have to. And like them, we have a choice. We not only have a choice on if we want to fly high, or a choice if we want to fly low, but we have a choice to be bold, right? And be courageous and take that step in whatever it is that we're dealing with. It wasn't easy for me, when I finally fessed up to lying to my wife and what I had did before we were married. And my wife wanted to divorce me. She wanted to leave, and I couldn't blame her for that. How could I couldn't be angry at her for that. Yes, there was anger involved, there was a bunch of emotions, but that had nothing to do with her. That had everything to do with me in what I did. But I had the choice each and every day of continuing to fight for that marriage and to stick around, right? And that took courage, and that takes being bold to do that, as well as on her part, right, to see it through. And any challenge that we face in life, it's going to take courage, and it's going to take us being bold to overcome that, right, and to get through that. And we have that inside of us. We just have to choose to tap into it. And we have to have the courage and not be afraid to stand out, even if that means that we have to stand alone and take a stand for what we believe in. But the sad fact is that most can't, because most people want to do what everyone else is doing. They don't want to stand for something. They don't want to stand out from the crowd. They don't want to be seen as that individual. I'm at a loss for words, right? They'd rather blend in, because that's easy, way easier than standing out and standing alone, especially when it's something that you believe is right. So, but if you can't stand alone here, right now, where you're at in life and whatever you're doing, the reality is how are you going to stand alone in the face of temptation? And this is a lesson that we all have to learn, regardless of what that temptation looks like for your life. I don't know what yours is. I don't know what yours is going to be. But wherever you're at in life, if you can't stand alone by yourself and for what you believe in, it ain't going to happen when the pressure's on. Right? It happens when all the pressure is not on and you're not in those situations. Right? When you find yourself in the opportunity to do something that would destroy your marriage, or you have the opportunity to make a decision to do something to destroy your career or your family or your position in the community. Right? The bottom line is, this how you handle the little things will be how you handle everything. So finally, when you stand out and you stand alone, and when you live like an eagle, it's amazing the difference your life can make, not only for you but those around you. And that is what God wants from you and I. So that's it for tonight on the Sunday sermon. If you need anything coming up, the holidays can be hard for a lot of people, because even though there's great things around Thanksgiving to be thankful for, and with Christmas, for a lot of people it's an extremely difficult time because they're alone, because maybe they lost somebody or they went through a traumatic event during this time of year, and I can relate to that. I can understand that. I get that. So I just want to say, if you're struggling with something or you feel alone, reach out to someone you can trust. If you don't have someone that you can trust and that will reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to be there for you, really, however that looks. So I love you, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for My Life Monday. Have a good night.